Good morning, everybody. It's Transformational Tuesday. Today I'm talking about Melanie. So Melanie is a 52-year-old single mum who runs her own business. She came to see me. She was an overseas client, actually. So I saw her on Zoom for autoimmune Hashimotos, constipation, bloating, and high stress. So for those of you who don't know me, get my words out today. I'm Ange Sinclair and I'm the digestive detective. Oh my God, I'm having trouble this morning. All of this started for Melanie when she was put into hospital with an infection, and she got other complications while she was in the hospital. She was also diagnosed with Hashimoto's because she was unbelievably cold, and so they did some testing on her and they discovered she had Hashimoto's. So Hashimoto's is an underactive autoimmune thyroid disease. And symptoms of this can be hair loss, cold all the time, bottom third of your eyebrows missing, weight gain, sleepiness, dry skin. So that they're the similar symptoms to just hypothyroid, but Hashimoto's has an autoimmune component to it as well. So your body's attacking itself with Hashimoto's. So she was also filled with lots of antibiotics while she was in hospital with these complications, which caused her to lose a lot of weight because she was in so much pain she couldn't eat anything. So after she was released from hospital, she noticed she was having issues with eating. She'd feel bloated and pain right after she finished eating. She was getting more and more constipated as time went on, and she started restricting her foods to help with the pain and bloating. Firstly, I know that high stress that she was under during that time was killing her gut bacteria. It was pretty high. It was pretty intense. Also outside of hospital, trying to manage children and a business, also pretty high stress. Her diet was pretty clean. She wasn't eating any rubbish, but she was fasting for a long time. So I don't recommend people fast for any longer than 12 hours because it does impact on your thyroid. And so I often see women with thyroid issues that fast for a long time and that flares their issues. So her diet was good, but it was really, really restricted. She wasn't eating any carbs and she'd reduced the foods to about 10. So what I find when I see people restrict their diet more and more and more, they have real problems bringing foods back in. And essentially, Melanie was fasting until lunchtime, having a high meat meal at lunch and then a small dinner with a few veg, and they're always the same veg. So with Melanie, she wasn't eating enough for a thyroid or to sustain her weight or for her gut bacteria, and nor for the constipation. She wasn't eating enough food to be able to be having a bowel movement, essentially. So Melanie's a real go-getter. She loves to do stuff for herself. So she'd done loads and loads of testing, one of them being a SIBO test. And she was positive for methane-dominant SIBO, which means the bacteria that she has in her small intestines cause her to be more constipation dominant. So she tried treating herself for this. And with fasting, and she'd done lots of food restrictions and antimicrobials, and it just wasn't working for her. She was losing more and more weight, and her food choices were getting smaller and smaller, which is what I see happen often in clinic when people start reducing foods. The smaller you take the meals down, the less you are able to eat an expansive range of foods. So I often see people doing this when they're trying to treat themselves. So it also takes them actually a longer time to get better because they're trying all the things and they're jumping from one thing to another thing without any rhyme or reason to what they're treating themselves. So one of the first things you need to do if you have constipation is to deal with the constipation. And then the reason that's causing it. While you're constipated, you will have SIBO. And while you have ineffective thyroid movement, that will cause your constipation. So you need to treat all of those things together. So when you get a complex case like Melanie's, it can be difficult to know what to treat first. So for me, we need to modify her stress. You can't get rid of it completely, so we need to reduce it as much as we can. I found her a herb supplier in the area where she lives, and we got straight onto a nervous system herbs, which I think is good for everybody. We also included more self-care for her. Some of the strategies took her as little as 10 minutes a day, which I think is really important, and it's really important now at this time when we're all under that underlying stress as well. So we started out by treating the constipation and her thyroid. We need both of these things to come back online before we could even consider treating her for the SIBO. And sometimes I find that if you can get somebody's bowel moving. You don't need to take such rigorous steps to treat the SIBO, which is good. Because her eating was so restricted, I didn't want to give her a SIBO diet because that would just compound the problems that we had. So what we focused on was reintroducing foods that would help her thyroid and her gut bacteria and her gut function. So we needed lots of diversity and colours to come back into a diet. So Melanie and I worked for about 8 months, and she was almost back to her pre-hospital self. She was still dealing with the Hashimotos, and she'd gained back a lot of the weight that she'd actually lost. So her bowel was working every day now, and her diet had really expanded. She was being able to eat most fruit and veg and non-gluten grains, and she was pretty happy with where she was at. So one of the takeaways I want you to get to is that you can control your health by what you're putting in your mouth. But you might need a bit of a process around that. So get help rather than try to slog it out for yourself. The route will be shorter and easier. So reduce your stress no matter what's going on. And like I said before, that's really applicable to all of us at this particular point in time. Herbs are great. Self-care practices are really good too. And we need to do them, hi Deb Fowler, more often. So if you're feeling lost and confused about what to do next, book in for a free 15-minute. I'll give you an action plan of what to do next. I will tell you how long you would expect that you need treatment, and for some things that you can do right now at home. So for those of you on Instagram, my link will be in the bio, and for those of you on Facebook, I'll add it to this post once it's loaded. So have a fabulous week, everybody. And next week I'll be the fermented food wrap up to see how everybody's gone with the fermented foods. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great week, everybody.